Each artist will have about 6 minutes to share insight into their work. We know we could talk with them forever, but because of time constraints, we're going to limit it to around 6 minutes tonight.
Yes, and just before we get started, I'm going to mention, if you have questions throughout this conversation, questions, thoughts, or comments, just go ahead and throw them in the chat box. If there is time at the end, we will visit the chat box and maybe pull 1 or 2 questions from there. No guarantee we'll get to them, but in case we do, just put any thoughts, questions, comments in the chat box. Okay, we're going to get started with Natalie. Natalie Hansen is a performer and artist living in Chicago. Having gone to school at Creighton University, she actually lived in Omaha for a while. For Making Space, Natalie worked with a filmmaker named Estrella Vargas and a small group of dancers in Chicago to create a short dance film entitled For James. The film features original music by Natalie under the name Facade Queen, a recent singer-songwriter project she has developed in Chicago. And go for it. I will unmute you, Natalie.
Hello.
Hi, Natalie. Your work, For James, is about the countless cries and demands to bring justice for James Scurlock's death here in Omaha. Will you tell us more about this and your role as an artist in discussing what is happening within the community?
Absolutely. So I believe that my role as an artist is to address and reflect on what is happening at that given time. And so at the time when James Scurlock was murdered, I was quarantining in Seattle, and I couldn't, I was just reading everything going on in Omaha, and it just every day I was just thinking about it, every single day, and I needed to create something about it. And so when I found out that I was accepted to create a piece for Making Space, I immediately started creating a song based on what happened to James. And I think it's just how can you not address what's going on right now as an artist, is how I personally feel. And yeah, so that I took some notes in case I forgot of what to say, but let me see. Yeah, just essentially that this piece is a reflection on the fact that we need to challenge racism in every aspect of our life. And so me as an artist, I hired all people of color on our team, and it was awesome to be able to share this opportunity with other artists who also wanted to create something meaningful to them in this time.
So you talk about your process of creating accessible movement. Would you talk a little bit about this accessible movement that's so much based on each dancer's abilities?
Yeah, so I'm an actor as well, and so whenever I create dance, I always create it from my actor's toolbox. And so I always seek out people who are willing to play. And so most of the movement usually just comes from play. Let's just play tag and see what happens when we do that. Let's just roll down this hill and see what happens. So as far as creating accessible movement within my actual choreography as well, I obviously had set choreography, but then if something wasn't feeling right in someone's body, let's say I told them to crouch and it hurts their knee, I said, try it in a way that doesn't hurt your knee, and then I'll take a look at it, and if we need to adjust it, then we can. But for the most part, everyone was able to just find a way to do the movement that complemented each other while also preserving like their own safety.
So you worked with a filmmaker. Will you talk about the critical elements discussed between the two of you to realize both of your visions?
Yeah, so Estrella Vargas, she's an amazing filmmaker. She is currently getting her MFA in filmmaking at DePaul. And so we met through a mutual friend. And so upon creating this piece, I essentially just played her the song that I had created, and from that, I kind of told her my vision. I imagined it to be all outside because I wanted it to be safe with COVID, and the weather was still pretty warm. But basically, she was so receptive to my image for the piece that essentially she created a vision board of what she imagined for each piece, with just photos of like scenery and kind of moods throughout the piece. And once she sent me that, I knew that we were on the same page. And what was also so cool is that Estrella came to both of our in-person rehearsals, and so she was there and able to see the movement before we filmed. And I think that really helped a lot, because she would just pipe in and say, hey, I have an idea for this part, can I just tell you? And then that gave everyone a sense of what to expect on the day of filming from her in terms of filming the piece.
So you talked about the Zoom rehearsals and you had in-person rehearsals. Can you compare the process between the two?
Zoom rehearsals were a little bit stressful for me, but I found something that actually worked pretty well, which was I recorded me teaching it prior to our Zoom rehearsal, and so I sent them a link of a pre-recorded YouTube link of me just teaching the choreography, and then I told them, okay, at 7 p.m. watch this, and then at 7:30 we will all hop on and I'll kind of re-walk through what I taught in that recorded video. And that seemed to work really well, actually. Like, it surprisingly worked well. It's obviously much better to be in person, but it worked.
You're a pioneer, along with so many others. Do you have anything else that you would like to add?
I do. So also, within reflecting on what's happening in the community, I think my piece also is a reflection of just kind of what it's like as an artist to just get back out there, because for a lot of us, it was the first time getting together and creating again. And so the movement isn't flawless. It's not like, wow, this is so like technical and so just like crazy movement, but I think that's so honest to myself and the other creators right now, is that we were able to just come together and create something that we all like felt meaningful to us. And I think it was really beautiful to just create something that didn't have to be like perfectly flawless, and I really enjoyed that.
Well, thank you for your insight into your piece and into working with such a critical issue in our community and in our culture.
Thank you.
Awesome.
We're moving on now.
Yes, thanks, Natalie.
Thanks.
Okay, moving on to Nicole. Nicole Mason Lazenby is a dance artist and educator who currently lives in Placerville, California. She's performed and taught all over the country. And before Placerville, she lived in Omaha for several years, where she taught at Creighton University, UNL, and the Omaha Academy of Ballet. And during this time, members of TBD had the honor of taking classes from Nicole and dancing in several of her choreographic works and evening length productions. So for Making Space, we commissioned Nicole to create a short dance film featuring a solo, which she performed on her absolutely gorgeous property in Northern California. So that is what you will see.
Hi, Nicole.
Hi, Josie.
Hi. You are such a well-established dance artist with work that spans theater, musical theater, film, and experimental performance art. Your piece, as Kat just said, takes place where you reside in the Sierra foothills. What is the significance of this land historically and to you personally?
Yeah, so historically in the Placerville, Diamond Springs area, or especially where I live, two native tribes lived on my property, on this land. There was the Miwok and the Nishanan tribes. And right where my house is built, I'm kind of built on this game trail, and we have these huge kind of granite matate grinding stones on our property, and you see, you know, just like the divots all over the stones. So, and we have a stream that runs through the property yearly, and so you just feel all of the history in this area. And Placerville being a gold mining town, the significance of, you know, the massacres of Native Americans during the mid-1800s, you feel that in this area. And in Diamond Springs specifically, which is only a few miles from my house, that was the main burial grounds for hundreds and hundreds of miles for many, many tribes in the area. So there's lots of history here. You feel it with the animals that come through this game trail that we live on, like on a daily basis. It's always so interesting because it's like we're the humans that are in the box. And when we're out of the box, the animals who actually live on this land get to see us. So it's kind of like a different feeling. Even when I was practicing and just out improvising on the property, at different times of day when I wouldn't normally be outside, every once in a while, you know, every day, 20-some, 30-some turkeys come through this game trail, and they're like, oh, you're here right now. Or I sent Kat a little picture of me practicing on another trail, and I looked up and there's the family of deer that live here, and they're like peeking around the trees, and they're like, oh, what's she doing? So it's just, it's a magical place to live, and I'm just really happy that I get to share that with people on this project.
So knowing all of that, how did you specifically select where you were going to be dancing and filming?
So that was an interesting process because all of the areas that I love on this property are very grounding to me, but they're not necessarily the best place to dance. So that was an interesting trial and error because so there were also tons of fires up here recently. And so the ability to practice outside was just non-existent for the last couple months. So really it was only until the last couple weeks that the air quality was good enough where I lived, and it wasn't 100 and something degrees, to where I could actually practice outside. So that kind of played a part in the selection process. But yeah, it was trial and error, like dancing on, you know, little peaks of rocks and going, how much can I balance here before I topple over? Or just wanting to dance a traveling phrase on the property. And as I'm going, like your foot is going in a gopher hole, or you're tripping on a rock and falling into the dirt. We have many bloopers of me eating it on my property pretty much throughout that week. But
So because this is such a site-specific work with rocks and gopher holes, did you find you were pushed in new directions artistically?
Definitely. I had a really loose kind of map of what I wanted to do. And I had, more so than normally, I had to be really spontaneous and flexible and not married to the product, because there was so much unknown when you're just in nature practicing. I definitely didn't have, I guess, the amount of control that I would normally like or vision. You know, you kind of envision it to turn out a certain way, and then when you're actually in the moment creating and doing it, you have to go, oh, this location I love so much isn't going to work because the light isn't shining just perfectly at this time that we chose, so we can't film here. Or you know, I had a lot more improvisation, and just I experienced more moments where I just had to kind of calm that anxiousness of you wanting to have control over what you're doing and just fully give in to what was happening in the moment, even if that meant I was creating on the spot, even if it meant, you know, what I did create wasn't going as planned because those natural elements were, you know, pushing back so hard. So definitely I had to let go quite a bit.
Awesome. Oh, sorry, Josie, go ahead.
Yeah. Do you have anything else you would like to say, Nicole, to the audience?
You know, I don't think so. I'm just so excited to share just the beauty of this area with everyone. It's kind of like a hidden gem in this little town. So I'm just really excited for that.
Well, thank you for your inspiring reflection on this magical environment. Moving on.
Josie.
Awesome. Okay, we're going to move on to Lauren. Lauren Simpson. Lauren is an Omaha-based choreographer and director of Lauren Simpson Dance. And in summer of 2020, so just this past summer, she started an experimental live outdoor performance project called Moving Truck in Omaha that was recently broadcast on Arts Across America. And I had the opportunity to be a part of that project and work with and get to know Lauren a little bit better. So for Making Space, TBD commissioned Lauren to create choreographic work to be set on two members of TBD Dance Collective, so Lauren Wickert and Allison Fort Miller. And this duet will be performed live at OutrSpaces during the live streamed event.
Hi, Lauren. First, I want to acknowledge that you received the 2021 Drew Billings Artist Support Grant from one of the Making Space program partners, Amplify Arts. So congratulations on that.
Thanks. Thank you.
What was your first impulse to create this new piece that we will see performed on Saturday?
Well, my first impulse, I had two impulses. One was to get back into a headspace of making work. I think maybe several of the artists might agree that having Making Space is a real opportunity to launch us back into a dance making headspace, which I know I hadn't really been in for a while. With the exception of Moving Truck, before that it felt like kind of a dry spell, and I was confused and kind of mourning what felt like the end of dance for the time being. And so just kind of launching me back into a creative process, I was really excited to get back to where I left off. And so I do sort of a style, I guess, where it's very small gestural material, it's very fast, it's usually in unison with one or more dancers. And it's often like body referential or prop referential, as it is in this dance. There's two kind of pieces of furniture, two chairs that the dancers are in. So my first impulse was to kind of like get back in the saddle. And then my other impulse was to really lean into a lot of the restrictions that COVID and a pandemic have put in front of us, and how are we making dances today and how are they looking different. And even just listening to Natalie and Nicole is reminding me, like, I also rehearsed outside and I'm also using a camera lens and a video all the time. And these are things, while I have both worked outside and in video before. Like they just seem pervasive now, or like, of course, if we're with multiple people, of course we're rehearsing outside. My whole process was done on my driveway for 8 weeks. The first time it is done indoors is at OutrSpaces at tech rehearsal just a couple days ago. So being outside is a big piece of that. The chairs are spaced. I don't think they're 6 feet. I mean, they're massive, but they're at a good distance from each other, and the dancers are very confined to them, and they never really get any closer. It wasn't so much a conscious score, kind of based on like the 6 feet apart rule, but it was definitely a practical one, and that they probably shouldn't touch. So here's sort of the one of the rules we're kind of sort of putting in place for this dance. So yeah, those are kind of my impulses.
So you talked about gesture and speed. For this particular piece, did you have preconceived phrases and gestures, a story, a plot, or did you work with the dancers improvisationally?
It's more the latter. I don't come to rehearsal with anything. It's a pretty collaborative process. Dancers make a lot of the material, and a lot of the process moves from large to small. I think it's much easier to move from a place of impulse and like quick curiosity in a really big gestural way. So that's how we start, and then we sort of bring it into a smaller confined space. I have lots of reasons why I like to work in that small way, but tactically that's how it goes.
And so the beautiful yellow velvet chairs
Right.
are, I saw a sneak peek, are a focal point. Do you use props often, or why were you drawn to these two chairs?
Yeah, I do love props. So I do props kind of in two ways. One are these like functional things like table or chair or things that have like recognizable uses. And then the other world of props is more art pieces like sculpture. But I love having something to work with and work from. I think it's like they become this other character. And these chairs are so specific. Like the dance couldn't be done without these chairs. My mom the other day was like, they were really big. They like didn't fit in my car. She's like, can't you just use a different chair? And I'm like, no, you can't use any other chairs. Like the dancers know the weight, the feel, the relationship of the arm of the chair to the length of their arm. I mean, it's so specific. And to me, it's really fun to like root movement in a place, whether that place is as small as a chair or, as vast as Northern California or something. I like the idea of like rooting it on a thing.
And so will you talk about how you notate your dance? Was it video capture? Was it written down? How do you do that? Especially your piece has a lot of speed in it.
Right. Yeah, it's very dense. There's like thousands of moves in a short amount of time. As the dancers get better at it, the piece gets shorter all the time because they do it faster. But so video really is kind of the best tool that we have. I would say this style of creating almost wouldn't be really possible without it. We add so much every rehearsal, and then it's just this little external brain drive that we can always go back to. But really there's also a lot of rehearsal. There's a rigor in the repetition of making it. And it eventually just seeps into the bones of the dancers. And while video, we rely on it a lot, you eventually get to a place in this particular small gestural material where it sinks in so deep that it's just in a body memory. And that's a goal that I have over like the arc of a rehearsal process. It feels surface and kind of, or even external out in the video. And then it kind of seeps in over time, just through pure repetition. Like the way the body learns is this just analog, repetitive process. I'm interested in that. And so we eventually get away from video.
Awesome. Thanks, Lauren.
Thanks.
Thank you, Lauren. We look forward to seeing this live piece performed at OutrSpaces this Saturday. Moving on.
Love it. Thanks, Lauren. All right, Nathan. Nathan Brumbaugh is a dancer, performer, and choreographer currently living in Omaha. Nathan's works and collaborations and performances have been seen all over the world, in intimate venues and vertical stages and national parks and music videos, to live performances with well-known artists. So we're so excited to have Nathan as a part of Making Space. Nathan will be creating and performing a solo live at OutrSpaces.
Hi, Nathan. Can you hear me?
You're muted.
Oh, I am?
Oh, no, sorry, Nathan.
Oh,
sorry.
hey,
There. Am I okay now?
yes.
Sweet.
Hi.
Hi.
So, from
It's an honor to be here.
from your bio, we can see that certain themes are magnets for you, like science and sex and politics and society. It's clear that you want to have a voice in these conversations. Will you tell us about your piece for Making Space as it relates to your voice in these conversations?
Yeah. My voice in this piece that I'll be presenting is being used in many ways. One, I'm speaking, the sound that you'll be hearing is like thoughts of my own process in my head, and stories, the stories that we tell ourselves. And then the movement is as if not being watched, dancing from my spirit. And then the space itself could be anything, is what I thought, and really had to approach it. I had many ideas, but to lead up to what I will be presenting, I did not see the full connection. So to me, conversation is so important in whatever we're saying. And keeping yourself open and politically, like, I'm speaking from a queer point of view, and this is also a time where I am witnessing a lot more pressure that I felt before, but since actually being honored, I don't know, growing up, there were some times where I was ashamed of who I was, and now I'm in a place where I feel like my voice could be threatened again, and it's a very telling time when I'm alone and isolated because of where we're at. I'm seeing myself wanting to grow, and so these images of shadows also come to play, and like trees growing and the connection to earth, and earth is a really big, huge importance in everything that I pretty much say. I keep thinking in my head, 6 minutes, Nathan, 6 minutes.
Okay, so let me ask you, I believe that you like to face fear and have a challenge, even of a dare.
Oh.
Are you feeling that in this spiritual space piece?
Yeah. Now that you bring it up like that, I do. There is conversation in my head, and it is kind of daring me to move forward, keep moving forward. And no matter who we are, as long as we're connecting with ourselves, that's the conversation that we're having, is to keep moving forward, to keep having experiences.
So you are creating a live piece, no audience. So what are some of your considerations in performing in this virtual space with no audience?
The energy is going to be lacking, I think, but I'm approaching it with this idea of dancing like nobody's watching, and also this idea that like other people's opinions are none of my business. So like that's why the open palette of the space itself could be whatever it is. I'm gonna approach it from my authenticity.
All right. Thank you for sharing your passion and your particular approach.
Oh, thank you. I'm honored.
All right. Moving on.
Awesome. Thank you, Nathan.
Thank you.
Okay. Gail. Gail Rocks is a dance artist currently based in Omaha, Nebraska. She graduated from UNL in the summer of 2020, so very recently. And recent projects of Gail's. So Gail was in The Moving Truck, a project of Lauren Simpson's that we mentioned earlier. And for Making Space, Gail worked with a local filmmaker and artist, Allegra Hangen, and a small group of Omaha-based dancers to create a short dance film.
Hi, Gail.
Hi.
So I know that you were recently an activist in helping to save the UNL dance program. So your work in that is greatly appreciated. You also have impacted the UNL community and the Lincoln community by establishing a chapter of OutrSpaces, which is open to dancers of all abilities, all levels. Now let's talk about your piece for Making Space. You are exploring identity and the training within the world of competitive studio dance. What inspired you to do this piece?
Hi, Josie. Thank you
Hi.
for that introduction, and thank you, Kat, as well. Yeah, so I grew up in a competitive dance environment, which is not very rare these days. It's a very common way that people are trained now, and I've basically just been reflecting on that experience ever since I came to study dance at college. Just because, you know, there are things that happen when you're in that environment that you can't reflect on until you get out of that environment. And that's true of a lot of situations. So I guess that was part of the inspiration. I've been studying competitive dance and youth, specifically like girls in that environment. I wrote about it for my thesis. For school, I wrote about Dance Moms. Don't know if you've ever heard of it. It's a horrible show. So yeah, like I have been very interested in that world for a long time now. And for this piece, for Making Space, I was really interrogating the space that my body takes up in that world and took up in that world. I'm a white, thin, able-bodied woman. Growing up in that world, I was celebrated in a way that my peers who do not look like me were not celebrated. And for this project, I really wanted to seek out people of other identities and ask them about what their experience is like in studios and in the competitive dance environment growing up. Granted, that can come with some trauma. So we did have conversations, but at the same time, I didn't push them into anything because, you know, that kind of thing is really deep-seated and it can be really hard to talk about. But the 3 dancers that I worked with for this project were amazing, and we had some really interesting conversations. And the point was for them to tell their stories, not for me to tell their stories for them. So it's mostly like each of our own choreography. It's like solo choreography, which I then like kind of pieced together into group parts. But within the film, you see all of our solos interwoven with group choreography as well. So, yeah.
And some of your group choreography was derived from watching video.
Oh, is Josie frozen?
Josie's frozen.
Okay, well, I think I know where she's going.
I can finish it too.
Okay.
You were generating, so you were so sad. I want Josie to ask this question.
I know, me too.
She'll come back.
Yeah.
So you generated movement in response to past videos of yourselves dancing in competitive studios. What is the significance of that current response to your past self?
Yeah, so we looked at like either home video or like video from recitals, video from competition. I had them choose one that was significant to them. And I guess like the significance of that was just really trying to look back at that time period and reflect on, you know, how the training and how, you know, the good experiences, the bad experience, how it's shaped us into the dancers and the people that we are today. Yeah, that's pretty much, that was the significance of it. And I also thought that it would make for a really cool video to include that footage as well.
Yeah. Speaking of the video, what were the elements of selecting the space for the site that you filmed at, the location, and how does that location play into the overall vision for the project? I'm going to let Josie back in.
Oh, poor Josie. Should I keep answering?
Yeah.
Okay. So I shot it in the Bemis gallery in downtown Omaha, and it's just one location. It's just a room with white walls and really high ceilings. The significance for it was that I love the way that space looks, and it has really good light, and I wanted to shoot it there. But also, the reason that I didn't want to do different locations is because I kind of wanted to sort of mimic what like a performance on a stage looks like or something. You know, it doesn't, you know, if you're going to perform at a recital, you don't change locations where you are. You just kind of exist in that one space. And yeah, I guess that was kind of the reason for the location.
Cool. Thanks, Gail.
Thank you.
I'm back. I'm back.
Yes, Josie.
Sorry, Gail.
It's okay, Josie. Kat finished up for you. I'm sorry, though. I wanted you to ask me the questions. You're doing such a good job.
It's the joy of virtual spaces.
Well, we are ready to move on then.
Yes, we are ready. We're ready for Erin.
All right. Hi, Erin again.
Erin.
You have performed all over the world, challenging perceptions of contemporary concert dance. Clearly, you are motivated to use dance as about social, political issues. You state that you are driven to create safe spaces for movers to be themselves, and that this has been a constant guide for you in your classes and in your choreographic works. Will you please tell us more about how you design and nurture such a safe space?
Yes. Hello. Hi, Josie. Nice to meet you. Hi, everyone. Yeah, so I feel like as a male dancer, I have always struggled with feeling seen and like supported in a classroom situation. So when I got my degree in dance, I was like, this space is our space. So I start every single class that I teach, even if it's like a baby ballet class. I'm like, hey, this is our fun space. We can play here, we can fail here, we can be as gross as we need to be, as beautiful as we need to be, but it doesn't matter, right? We're dancing for ourselves. So I just kept that rhythm going. And when I started making work, I was really interested in bodies that looked like mine, because I was so used to seeing bodies that didn't on stage. So I got into the conversation and I was like, why do people like like male dancers? Like, where are they at? Where are my full body Black women? Where are my queer men? Where are my trans women? Like, where are these people at in the conversation? So I went out and found those people, and through that, my research guided me to like the underground ball scene. So it just worked. So in my work, it's the same conversation. I'm like, hey, this piece is gonna be wicked because I'm crazy, and it's gonna be big and long, and all the styles composed together to make this awkward little 8-minute piece. So ride with me. Know that this space is not just my space. This isn't just my work. This is our work, right? So I gave them the responsibility as well, because I feel like as a dancer, I need that constantly. I need to know that like I'm not just a puppet for this guest artist. I like to know that I'm seen. So that's how I cultivate that.
So in defense, the name of your solo work, you are using house and contemporary styles. And so how and why are you communicating that way? Why did you choose those styles?
So house is something I picked up in graduate school. And I really just fell in love with the freedom and the groove and the like, just the yumminess and the fierceness inside of it. So my work recently has navigated that space. But when thinking about what this work was, defense, I was really curious in my queerness in the conversation, because I'm challenging my childhood and like calling all the things out in it. So I was like, so what if this house queer work is like my younger self? What if it's like baby Aaron out here navigating this space? Like, how can that inform part 2 of this? So in my piece, the house movement represents this like playful, this like carefree, this like young body that has never been stopped by a police as a Black man, who has never been told no because of how they look. So it's very playful. And the second part of my piece is very contemporary, because I love contemporary dance. And I'm just really into the like juxtaposition of it. Like I'm into like the strength and the power and the femininity and the like elongated, like all that combining. So part 2, I really wanted this like very hyper masculine beast. And through contemporary dance, I felt like I could communicate that effectively. So that's why so that's why I did that, to answer your question. Oh, you're muted.
I loved hearing about baby Aaron. I understand you had to change the score at the very last minute. Wow. Tell us about that process.
Yeah, so again, like I said, I'm like wicked and like out here just trusting the process now, because I feel like everyone mentioned earlier with COVID, I felt like I lost my voice and I lost like my groove as an artist. So I was like, this song is so cute and it's like so poppy and it works and like, you know, but like that's not what this piece needs. So I do this weird thing when I create a new work where I sit and talk to my iPhone in a voice memo. That's how I've been navigating space recently. And that started in grad school as like, you know, those like weird things you got to do in grad school. It's like, do a dance for camera when you, it was like one of those workshops. So I recorded myself talking for 27 minutes, post a bottle of wine. And I was like, this is the score. This is what it has to be. Because that it just is. And it terrified me. And I think I scared the ladies when we talked about it, but they were excited. And it just happened. And I trust the process, and I think it's lovely. But yeah, I start my process like that anyway. So I talk to my phone and I'll be like, I have a prompt, right? I'll be like, energy. So we'll talk about energy words. And then I'll go from there. But with this one, I just like went in on it. And that's how we arrived here.
Well, thank you for sharing so many different aspects. We look forward to seeing all of these pieces on Saturday.
Yeah, thanks, Aaron. I didn't get to introduce you too, so I'll do that really quick. Aaron Allen Jr. is contemporary dance artist and choreographer from Chattanooga, Tennessee, who currently lives in, I'm going to try and not say this wrong, Murfreesboro, Tennessee. And Aaron teaches dance at Middle Tennessee State University, where he also went to undergrad, and also at Haynes Middle School. And Aaron is going to be performing a solo live at OutrSpaces on Saturday. And that's everyone. That's everyone, and that's all of our questions. So thank you so much. I don't see any questions in, oh gosh, I do see a question. Oh yes. Oh, but it is 7:20. Okay. I feel like we must end and keep to our time goal. So thank you so much, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. And thank you, Josie, for moderating this conversation. Thank you to all the artists for sharing such incredible insight into your creation process and the work that we will see this Saturday. It has been such a joy to work with you all, and we cannot wait for this performance to happen. In closing, we want to thank OutrSpaces, our partner in producing and hosting this event, as well as Amplify Arts, who partnered with us to host the Making Space application and assisted with the artist selection process. We want to thank the Nebraska Arts Council and Nebraska Cultural Endowment for providing additional support to make this event happen. And thank you all for being here. Thank you for joining us on a, whatever night it is, Tuesday night. This has been such a fun process, so thank you all. We look forward to seeing you on Saturday during the live streamed event. So thank you so much. If you have any burning questions, you can also Instagram any of these artists or find them in various ways. So please continue the conversation outside of this Q&A. Awesome. Thank you all so much.
Thank you.